I think it's pretty cool that the new Google Nest Doorbell battery does have the option to be battery powered. This allows you to place the doorbell pretty much anywhere without having to use existing wiring so that you can receive notifications in your home and on your phone. But today's video is all about using this with a wired connection, as there's actually quite a few different benefits that you lose when you only use it on battery powered. So today we're going to walk you through all the ways in which you can wire the Nest Doorbell battery and the benefits of that. Let's start by talking about the features that you're missing out on when you do use the battery. The first thing you'll notice is that when you're plugged in, the live view instantly pops up, but when you're on battery, you have to select live video for that feed to start streaming. You no longer have to worry about battery power because it's plugged in, it will always stay powered. But if the power goes out, you still have the charge to back it up. Now, one thing I did notice is that even though you're wired, it does not charge the Nest Doorbell. You still need to pop it off to charge it, but wiring it does keep it constantly powered. Next is you can choose the option for more recordings without having to worry about the battery life drain because it is constantly powered. Now, another feature that's only possible by being wired is being able to use your existing doorbell chime. Next, you are able to increase the sensitivity of motion events on the Nest Doorbell without having to worry about the battery life going down. You can also increase the event recording length up to 3 minutes and not have to worry about battery life going down. And lastly, you can increase the resolution on the Nest Doorbell to max, again, without having to worry about the battery going down. Now that we know the benefits of using the Nest Doorbell wired, let's go ahead and get it set up. Now, this is just a brief setup, but if you do want to see my full video about that, I'll leave it linked at the end of this video. And here is the Nest Doorbell battery. Here on the back of the device, we have the wiring terminals that we'll get to in a little bit. First thing we're going to do is plug it in. Then we're going to use the Google Home app to get this set up. This cannot be viewed or used in the Nest app. Then we will scan the QR code and follow the prompts to get this connected to Wi-Fi and choose different preferences. And then here I'm going to choose that I'm going to set this up under a wired connection. And now that we have it set up, it's showing a video that we can watch on how to get this installed using the 20-degree wedge and the wall plate. But we're going to have that installed already. So now let's talk about wiring this. Now that our doorbell is charging and set up, let's go ahead and talk about the various ways in which this could be wired and making sure your home is compatible. For this, I will be using Google's Compatibility Checker and walk through that so you can follow along in the link in the description below. So the first step is we are going to look for our existing doorbell. So here we have that right here. And then what we're going to do is press the doorbell and see if there is a chime that rings anywhere within our home. I think I heard something. Let's head inside and find the chime. All right, there is our chime. So now let's take a closer look. So here I can just pop this off and you can see right now that I have some wires over here. Yours might look a little different. Now there's 3 types of chimes you could possibly have. You could have one like mine that's a mechanical chime, has the wiring. You could have a chime that has the wiring and has battery, or your chime might only have batteries, which is a wireless chime. And it's just a doorbell sending a wireless signal to the chime to operate. Now, first we're going to talk about the first two. So if you have wires, or if you have wires and battery. We're going to save the third wireless chime for the end, or the situation there is you're just gonna have to use the Nest Doorbell with battery. So now that we know we have wiring, the next step is to find our doorbell transformer. Now the best way to do this would be to follow the wires that you see here. So if I pull this off, I could see the direction of the wires in which they're going. But when I originally started using smart doorbells, I could not find my transformer. So what I had to do is go up in the attic, follow the wiring line, and that led me down into the furnace room. So let's head there. All right, here is the furnace room. Now we're going to see if we can find any wiring that looks similar to the wiring that we found behind the chime. And right here, there is actually a few wires that I can follow. And those wires go right here into the furnace. So let's go ahead and open it up. All right, now we have a lot of wires. So what you're going to look for is you're going to look for that wire, And there's a lot of components in here that are for the furnace, but there's actually a transformer in here that works with the doorbell. So now we can follow this wire right here, and there you can see we have the same white and red wire that we had at the Chime, and right here it is connected to what is called the transformer. So what the transformer does is it transforms the voltage that comes into your home, so typically 110 volts, and transforms it into a lower voltage that can power the doorbell and your smart doorbell. Now we need to find what voltage this transformer is to see if it is compatible with the Nest Doorbell. The Nest Doorbell requires a 8 to 24 VAC, which is volts on alternating current, to be able to work. So let's go ahead and see if we can find any labels on here that state that. Now here on the transformer, I don't actually see what the voltage is. I do see a model number and I could Google and probably find out, but down here we do have 120 volts or 60 hertz. Now that's good news because the Nest Doorbell not only requires 8 to 24 VAC, it also requires 10 VA or volts amperage, and then it also requires 50 to 60 hertz. So it's got that down, but is how we're going to find out if it has proper volts is the old-fashioned way with a multimeter. Yes, I know this isn't old-fashioned, but this is a great way to test this. So here I have my multimeter. I'm going to turn it on to test volts on AC current. And then what I'm going to do is, while this is still live, so I haven't turned off the power or anything, I'm going to place each one of these onto the transformer. All right, and there's our reading. So we have 21.3 or 0.4 volts coming from the transformer. So that converted our 120 or 110 volts to 21. And so we need a transformer that has 8 to 24 volts. So that means our transformer is compatible with the Nest Doorbell. So let's go ahead, get it installed. Now I know that was a lot of information, but to put it simply, if you have a working doorbell with wiring and a transformer, you most likely will be able to use the Nest Doorbell battery. If it does not work, you may need to look at upgrading your transformer. Now, if you can't find the Chime near your furnace, you might find it on the electrical panel or in the attic or behind the Chime. So you might need to do a little bit of digging so that you can find that. Oh, by the way, I'm Brett and I'm not an electrician. Proceed with caution. Now we're going to turn off the power to the doorbell, remove our existing doorbell, and then we need to add the Nest Doorbell's base plate. And I actually added the wedge and then I put on the base plate, and that just angles the Nest Doorbell 20 degrees. And here is the difference. After we have our wedge and mount installed, we're now ready to wire the doorbell. And now what we need to do is take the wire connectors that come in the box of the Nest Doorbell, and I'm going to attach these. This just makes it a bit easier to connect these to your doorbell instead of using your existing wires. Mine are actually too short to be able to do that, so I'm really glad that this has come with the kit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna squeeze these and push it over the old wire and let go, and that will grasp onto the wire so that we can then put these onto the doorbell. So I just squeeze on, and now you can see I pull, and that is not coming off. And make sure they are on snug. Now we're going to take the other end of the wire connectors and attach it here. It does not matter which one goes on which side. Press them on snug and then tighten them up. And make sure the wires are pointing down as to not touch the faceplate here. So now we're going to stick the wires in there. I really like how the wedge adds some extra room for the wiring. Might be pretty difficult here if I didn't have the wedge. So now we're going to place the circle in here and then push it flush and press down on the top. And if it doesn't work, sometimes the wires have moved into the way. And make sure that is on secure. And now we have a wired Nest Doorbell battery. One thing to note is the new Nest Doorbell does support a wider range of voltage, so you will not need to add a Chime connector or anything to the Chime that you may have in the past. So if you do have one of those installed on your doorbell, you will need to remove it. Here I'm removing the jumper cable from my Ring video doorbell. And now let's turn the power back on. Now that it is wired, when we head into the front porch doorbell, we can see that our live view automatically pops up. If we go into the settings and we go to battery, here you can see that we are currently plugged in. Then if we go to Doorbell, we can see that we have the option to turn on the visitor announcements, which announce on your Google speakers. But here we have the option to ring the indoor chime. And if you turn that off, it's not going to ring the indoor chime. So it's nice that you have the option right there. Let's test the chime. Because I have visitor announcements on, then my speakers will be notified.
Someone's at the front porch doorbell.
Now, if your chime does have wires and battery, that's an electronic chime. And there's actually a few settings for that. So here, if we go into the doorbell settings, down here you would select, yes, I have an electronic chime. And then it gives you the option to lengthen the ring of that chime. So if I do this on my mechanical chime, it turns on the doorbell and holds it on and then turns it off, which you don't want to have happen on a mechanical. But here on the electronic chime, you might have a longer ring, so you can come in here and choose the length of that ring depending on what your electronic chime actually does. So now that we have that installed, we can put the cover back on. So what about if you found a wireless chime where the chime is located? Well, when we purchased this home, that's actually what we had. So we had a doorbell here, and then we had a wireless chime just screwed into the wall so that it would send the signal over there. No wires were connected or anything. Well, to install my very first smart doorbell, I had to learn all about the wiring to be able to get it to work. So what I did is I ended up going to Home Depot and I purchased a transformer, got it wired, and then I purchased the chime, got it wired, and then I could have the smart doorbell work and everything work properly. But you may not want to do all that work. So you have a few options. One is you could hire a Nest Pro to be able to do that for you and get everything set up. Or the second option is you can just use the battery power of the Google Nest Doorbell battery, and that should work really great. So those are your options there. Now I had a question on what if you don't want to use a chime with the Nest Doorbell being wired? Well, there are two options. The first option is to head into the Google Home app and go under the doorbell, and here you have the option to turn off the indoor chime so that the chime will no longer ring. Now the other option is to remove the wiring from the chime so that all you have is the doorbell connected directly to the transformer, and then the notifications would come through your phone or they'd come through the visitor announcements to your Google speakers. So let's go ahead and try that out. So to fully remove the chime, we're going to remove the two wires here, and then we're going to connect them together. To double check our volts are correct, I did turn on the power, and here we are getting the 19 volts. So let's go ahead, connect these together and try it. All right, the power is back on. If we go into the settings and then we go to battery, here you can see that it's showing that I am currently plugged in. And then here under doorbell, I still have the option to use visitor announcements, and I also have the option to ring indoor chime, but that of course is not going to do anything. Let's test it from the doorbell. All right, and here we can see the doorbell is still working when I push the button. I didn't hear a chime, but we do have visitor announcements. And I even saw that it was me. Pretty crazy. Now the last place in which you might want to wire a doorbell is in a location like this, where there is no existing wiring, there's no existing anything. So there are three possible solutions here. One is you can simply just use the Nest Doorbell battery as a battery doorbell, and then you'll have to pop it off every time it needs to be charged and put it back on. The next option would be to go through the process of adding wires here somehow and connecting it to a chime and then connecting it to a compatible transformer. And you could do that. You could also hire a Nest Pro to do that. But the third option is you can actually get a power supply to be able to wire your Nest Doorbell and just plug it in inside of your home. So I actually picked up this Wassertein power supply. I know there's also going to be one coming from 97 specifically for the Nest Doorbell battery, but I picked this up for my Nest Hello and it worked great. So we're gonna test this out here with the Nest Doorbell. And so what this does is you just plug this in and then we'll wire the back of it to the doorbell, and then that will give it the wired connection. So you'll get all the benefits of being wired, except it is not connected to a chime. So you have the power, but no Chime support. Now before we get this wired in, I do want to test the voltage on it as well, because if it does fall within the 8 to 24 volts, then it is a power supply that will work with our Nest doorbell. So let's do that now. Now when I plug this in, I need to make sure that these do not touch each other. Also, this power supply is not weather resistant, so it has quite a long cable so that you'd be able to route the wire so that you could plug this in into your home. All right, we have that plugged in. Now let's test our multimeter. And there you can see I'm showing 19.5, around the 19. So we have 19 volts of power coming through the power supply, and that will be plenty to power the Nest doorbell. While you are wiring this, make sure that the power supply is not plugged in yet. Now we'll need to take off the mounting plate first to route the wires behind the doorbell. Now we're going to connect the wires, making sure that they are not touching when they're fully connected. As you can see, these were made for the Hello, so they are a little big. And now we can snap it into place, putting the bottom on first and pressing down on the top. Now let's plug it in inside. The product description says with the 1.5 meter cable, it can access any outlet in your home. And yes, it reached this one, but just barely. Perfection. Now that we have it wired with the Wassertein power supply, again, not weatherproof, make sure you plug it inside. But let's go ahead and check in the app if it is showing plugged in. So if we go under the battery, there you can see it is plugged in, so everything is working properly. But if we do go to the doorbell feature, even though it shows we can use Ring Indoor Chime, that is not available. But the visitor announcements, where it announces on your Google Home speakers, will work.
Someone's at the front porch doorbell.
Hey.
One last question I did get is, will the Chime still work if the internet is down? And the answer is yes, the Chime will continue to operate. If the internet is down though, you will not receive notifications on your phone or on your Google speakers. Once the internet comes back on, you will receive a notification that somebody was at the door, even though it happened in the past. Also, one other feature on the Nest doorbell battery is it has 1 hour of storage of events that can happen when the power is out or when the internet is down. So if the power is out, it's going to then default back to the battery life, and it will track the events on there. And then as soon as the power comes back on and the internet comes back on, it's going to upload that event or the events that happened while the power was out to your account, so then you would be able to see those events. Now, if you do need to pick up a transformer or a compatible power supply, I'll leave those linked in the description below. And so those are all the various ways in which you can wire the Nest doorbell battery so that you get the full potential of what it can do. Now, if you are looking to use the Nest doorbell wired, it actually has a Chime connector that you'll need to do. So if you want to know more about that, you can check that out here. And if you want to see my full video all about the features the Nest doorbell battery has, you can check out that video right here. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.